the morning sunrise. In Lions Gate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air, in Lions Gate the fair.
Thank you, Kevin. Welcome to another Lion's Den. Our guest host tonight is Her Excellency Dame Magdelena Kress. She is one of the most experienced textile laurels in Tir. Besides her impressive background in fiber processing, spinning, and various dyeing techniques, her technical knowledge and skills in weaving cloth are unmatched in Tir Righ. Holder of the Jean de Lion, which is the Kingdom Award for Excellence in Arts and Science since 2003, the Étoile d'Argent in 2014, which is the Principality Award for furthering the arts and sciences. She has been Principality Arts and Science Champion and remains the only person in Tir to ever receive their laurel and white scarf on the same day. That was a fun day and a good buffet. Though she is capable of much mischief and should never be left alone if shenanigans are afoot, she remains to us a treasure of Tir Righ. Welcome tonight our guest host Magdelena and the panel for discussing the warp and weft of weaving in Tir Righ, Duchess Caoimhe, Order the Laurel, Duchess Morweena, Order the Pelican, Signora Aspasia, Her Ladyship Etan, and Her Ladyship Margoton. You need to unmute.
Nope. Magdelena, you're still muted.
All right. Thank you, Your Excellency, for those very kind words. As His Excellency said, I'm a very experienced textile artist. I have been weaving for in excess of 20 years. I am a spinner. I am a weaver. I do band weaving. I do basket weaving. And I do natural dye. And I do felting. But my real passion is for creating cloth, and I'm very excited to be joined by some very excellent weavers across the Principality, and they make impacts. I'm sure everybody has the experience of Etan. She did a great Lion's Den on Gothic tapestry, as well as Morweena is as an excellent band weaver, tablet weaver, and she also did a Lion's Den. So we have people from the Vancouver Island of Heartwood, Her Ladyship Aspasia, and from our most northern realms of the Principality, Her Ladyship Margoton, and then the rest of us are pretty much around the Lions Gate area. So what we thought we would do tonight is that we have a series of questions that we'll be asking the panel. But as we ask the questions, if anybody has any comments, please feel free to join our discussion. We're very passionate about what we do, and we want to have the opportunity to basically geek out together about weaving. So basically, maybe just for the whole panel, how long have you been weaving, and what's on your loom right now? So maybe if we can start with Duchess Caoimhe.
I've been weaving since 2001, so about 20 years. I took a tablet weaving class with Mistress Irsa, who became my laurel in time, and I was absolutely hooked. So I've and most of my weaving for a very long time was band weaving, quite fine work. I can show that later. And what's on the loom right now, I have a Coast Salish style tapestry going that I've been working on with some of the Coast Salish weavers here. sort of a not exactly identical style, but that's sort of another interest has been the traditional weaving here on the coast.
Excellent. I should mention, I've got some twill napkins, turn twill on my 8 harness. I also have some leg wraps on my other one. So that's what I've got on there. So up to the cold key. What's happened, Margoton? Well, how long have you been weaving, and what's on your loom?
I've been weaving just about 30 years now, on and off. Due to health issues, it doesn't seem like that much time has actually accumulated because I've taken more time off than on sometimes. But I first learned to weave at some Pennsic between 17 and 20. And there were a couple of different weaving classes that I took in my first few Pennsics back when I lived in Eldermere.
Excellent.
As far as what's on my loom, well, I have innumerable projects because most of my looms are this big. My floor looms don't currently have anything on them, but I've got probably a good 15 or more projects on small tape looms and tablet woven projects started.
Excellent. Signora Aspasia. There you go.
Thank you for the ladyship there. I am still a lady, Lady Aspasia. I found a picture of me in grade 9, and I belonged to a weaving club, and so that was my first foray into weaving. And we worked on an inkle loom, and I still have the belt that I made, all acrylic. It's quite bright. And then again, I didn't do much of anything until university, and when I went in for my teaching degree, and I had an art background, and I took some textile classes and just fell in love. And then I finished university, and I did some stick weaving and things like that with the kids in school over the years. And then 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit before that, Kiva got me excited about tablet weaving, and I wanted to know more. And then I wanted to know more. And then she said, take some classes. So I did. And then, so about 10 years ago, I got back into it, and it has been an absolute passion for me. We actually moved from LionsGate to Heartwood, so that one of the reasons was so that I could have a studio, which is this, like a single car garage size for my looms. On my large loom, I am just finishing up a blanket that I want to use for events, when I go and do overnight events. And it's all my hand spun and hand dyed. And on my smaller table loom, I've got, I do a lot of cotton towels and stuff like that I merchant. And then and what else have I got? And then I've got an inkle loom, of which I just have been learning pick up with Halima. And I have a Japanese loom that I use. And at the moment, there's nothing on that. And I do a lot of my cotton linen quick weaves on that to make towels and things. So that's what I've got on my loom.
Sounds like you've got a lot on the go. My husband says I should stop referring to our house as the studio because I've bled all over the place. Morweena, I know you have made stuff out of your weaving, but how long have you been weaving, and what is on your loom right now? I thought you did winding a warp for something from the Jane Stafford Guild.
Yeah. Well, how long I've been weaving is a little, I shouldn't say complicated, but I started tablet weaving about 2005, 2006. And then I stopped. I did it for about 2 or 3 years, and then I stopped for 8 years because I had this enormous puppy and I didn't have a loom, and I used to tie my tablet weaving to the furniture, which didn't work with a 100-pound puppy bounding around my apartment. And then I picked it up again I made notes. See, I'm a computer person, I made notes. I picked it up again around 2016, and I've been doing it really steadily, the tablet weaving, since 2016. So another, that's at 5 years. And then I started trying to teach myself how to weave cloth in 2017, the fall of 2017. So just under 4 years, I've been weaving cloth. And right now I have on my floor loom, I have, yes, the Jane Stafford, which is a modern weaving loom, weaving guild. I have a cotton warp on that. And then my 2 tablet weaving looms, I have 2 different patterns from this book, Appleseeds and Fox Noses, on each of my tablet looms.
Okay. And Etan, how long have you been weaving? You mentioned that you started at Cap College?
Well, as people are talking, I remember that many years ago, probably in the early 90s, I took an inkle loom weaving class at Clinton and really loved it and was playing with that. And then I went away for 20 years. So that sort of put a halt on it. So yeah, I've really been weaving since 2012 from the CAP course. And I just had something pop up on my Facebook page that said that I've been doing tapestry for 7 years. So probably 7 or 8 years I've been seriously weaving. And what's on my loom right now is I'm just finishing up a couple of little Coptic pieces. I think you can see one in the background there if it shows up well enough. And on my tablet loom, I'm finally, after 4 tries, getting the Dublin Dragons. And I find that I'm finding I can
having a conversation on that.
Yep. But I can't do it for very long. It's very slow because if I try to, I can't keep my concentration on it very long. So I can do about 3 repeats and then I start messing up. So I'm learning to stop in time. So yeah.
Excellent. I'm glad you conquered that.
I
All right.
too. I'll never do it again.
Okay. So Morweena, how did you get into weaving? So how did you transition into fabric weaving?
Tablet weaving, like I said, it's where I started. And I actually started because my Laurel, Mistress Agnes, was teaching a class on how to make those fitted coat hardies. And some of those, I need to breathe. So most of the garments have a tablet woven finish on the edge of the sleeve because it provides a nice brace to stop buttons from pulling out on those really tight coat hardy sleeves. So she taught me how to weave with, weaving onto just the edge of a piece of cloth. So that was the very first tablet weaving I did. And I thought, oh, this is really neat. And so I bought like the Candace Crockett book and taught myself how to do, I'm gonna say complex patterns, 4 forward, 4 back, and started finding patterns on the internet and was doing that. And like I said, I had to stop for a while because I didn't have a loom. I was tying off furniture, which worked great to a certain extent. And then when I got back into it, I bought a tablet loom, an inkle loom, and I was working on that. And I kept looking for ways to tension my cloth. And I ran across a little table loom on Craigslist, and I went and bought it with the intention of using it to hold my warp for tablet weaving. But then it sat in the corner of the sewing room for a really long time. And then one day I had to renovate my sewing room because they were renovating outside the building. And I said, okay, you either need to sell this loom or you need to figure out how to weave cloth. So I picked up a book from the library, and that's how I started weaving cloth. Was you either use this loom or you get rid of it. So the incentive was just to use a tool that I'd already bought. And then I got hooked, and this is fun. This is neat. Make this, make that. And then I found an online weaving guild, which is the only lessons I've ever had. And I can see my skill just getting better and better and better thanks to that. but I still keep tablet weaving on the side because I find it very, very soothing and very therapeutic, particularly right now with the last, well, it's still March 2020, right? The last year.
I have no idea
I have no idea what
when
day
or
it is.
where we are.
Not being able to go out, having no activities, all that Netflix time. If I can spend some time tablet weaving, it's much more soothing, it's much more relaxing, and I make a lot of stuff, and I went up selling it on Etsy or giving it to people and all that kind of stuff.
So Margoton, how do you advance your skill set? Because I find that that's one thing I've found about weaving. You just can keep moving it forward, learning new things. How do you do that? How have you found to be the best thing for you? And maybe other people could jump in after Margoton.
That answer, I think, will be different for every last person out there. For me,
For sure.
I've been very fortunate. The local guild here has a master weaver who has been the guild president for the last few years, and Laura Fry is a fantastic mentor to have.
So she's amazing.
And so I've been very fortunate. When I want to do broadcloth, I have her expertise to draw on if I need it. And when I'm doing my own stuff, this year I allowed the universe to sort of hand me my challenges. And so right now my tablet weaving has progressed a fair bit simply because I'm trying things I hadn't before as a means of helping someone who wants to publish a book get his patterns test woven. So rather than picking a pattern out of a book I already have, I'm literally getting handed blind the next thing he wants woven for the book.
Neat.
Forcing me
That's
to
super cool.
learn how to read what I'm doing a little differently and learn how to adapt when some of the twist neutral patterns turned out not to be twist neutral. Or learn to deal with a lot of accumulating in some of his non-twist balanced patterns.
Anybody else talk about? I know that Morweena talked about the online guild of Jane Stafford. I am a big proponent of the modern weaving guilds myself. I've learned a lot taking from just learning the good the hand of a fabric from being passing around from show and tell. They put on seminars that you can attend. You can also go to conferences like ANWIG. I believe that Prince George held the last ANWIG. Victoria had the one before. So I have found that to be really helpful. Anybody else have any other ways that they do that?
One of the things I want to do a corollary to the guilds is right now all of the meetings are by Zoom. So you don't have to be a Vancouver person, for example, to be part of the Vancouver Guild or the Langley Guild or whatever. And that is fabulous. And the Zoom meetings have been really interesting.
Yes.
That's a great.
Yes.
I find it's twofold for me. I really, in the arts and sciences, there's a lot of options now depending on if you like to compete or not, or display or not. I really enjoy competing. So I like sticking my teeth into a project with an idea. I do want to take this to Kingdom, like that helps me. And then how I structure my documentation is to pull out all the components of weaving, of the structure, of the tools or whatever it is. So that's a way that I've had to force myself to develop skills and knowledge in areas I didn't necessarily have before a piece. So sometimes for me, it's a specific piece. And then in other times, it's been real like we were saying, mentorship outside of the SCA. One of the things I find coming to weaving in the SCA is it took me a long time to realize that I had big gaps in my knowledge about how to approach weaving projects. And so going to like a community college or that kind of thing where I can do a beginner's course and fill in those gaps and connect with people, and then having some master weavers it really connect with and inspire and help gain confidence and stuff. So that's been big for me.
That's a good segue though into a question for you, Kiva. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to learn to weave?
I think anytime you come into the SCA, you take a class, you fall in love with the topic, whether it's blacksmithing or weaving, you're gonna have big gaps, and you've got to sometimes swallow your pride and realize you might be advanced in certain aspects of the knowledge, but you're a beginner, a dead beginner in a lot of other ones, even if you've been doing it for years in the SCA. So for me, I know that there was a huge leap in my skills when I connected with a master. I lived in South Africa for about 4 years, and so I connected with a master weaver there named Norma Ordman. And it was a total game changer, and it really opened my horizons. And so I think to anybody, sorry, my daughter just muted me. Sorry. Don't be afraid.
You won't pierce your ears.
yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to seek out modern help for an SCA project. There's terminology to learn, there's equipment to learn, there's approaches to designing a project and testing it out, and the importance of doing samples and all the rest of it. Like really take your time, and it'll give you a great basis. So that's what I would say, is don't be afraid to reach out to what is there modernly and bring that back into the SCA.
And you took some courses at Place des Arts as well, which is in Coquitlam. Yep. And that's where I learned to weave as well, and many modern weavers. I think the one thing about in the SCA, sometimes we're very myopic that we look within the SCA, but if you look at the bigger world of weaving, this is lots of people embrace it who are weaving maybe for different reasons. We all love the historical piece passionately, but you can learn a lot from people who aren't necessarily interested in that particular piece. So anybody else about advice for new weavers?
I think
again, look to your community, because tapestry seems, and I'm going to stick mostly to tapestry, seems pretty rare. But I was amazed when I finally connected with a couple of people that there's little groups studying things everywhere. And so that you can often find people who are, if it's not specifically medieval, it doesn't matter that much, because the techniques, a lot of the techniques carry through. So look to the community around you. And now online, there's a huge amount of stuff online.
Yeah, I recently attended a Vancouver Guild on photographing textiles. That was super interesting as well. So there's stuff that sort of goes beyond just the warp and weft, because if you want to show people what you're doing right now, we're in this video world, this social media world. So they go beyond, just beyond kind of the day-to-day. But that kind of takes us to our next question for the Signora. What's your best weaving tip or your go-to resource to kind of get inspired for your weaving?
I think my fiber. My go-to resource is my fiber. I find something that just feels like, okay, this is kind of going with this, and this goes with that, and this goes with this, and now what can I make? Sometimes I'll be inspired by, for me, weaving is very practical. I love to make beautiful, practical things. I think that the weaving doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. It can be quite simple, where you use color and texture for your things, what you make. So I think that just looking at what you have and looking around you to be inspired. You can be inspired by a magazine picture. You can be inspired by going to the seashore and seeing all the colors around you. I do a lot of free form kind of hangings and things like that, as well as cloth that's very free form. and I'm quite an organic weaver too. So yeah, so those are the kinds of things that I use to inspire me.
Okay, I'll throw it back at the panel. Any tips that you for weaving that might make it easier for somebody that you've discovered? Like for me, it's important having the bench, the right size bench for the ergonomic pieces of weaving. I had to finally break down, get one for my smaller loom, but a proper bench to be sit. Ergonomically, weaving can be very tough. So anybody have a tip that they have?
So I've got one tip too. Sorry, I forgot that one. I wrote it down and didn't mention. So one of the things that I just learned was if when you've got your warp and you're getting it ready to put onto your loom, I'll tie the middle sections like about every yard super, super tight, but keep the end, the end that I'm going to end up putting through the reed and the heddles, pretty loose. And then when I'm doing my wind on, instead of raking my fingers through the fiber, I just go to the part where it's really tied on tightly and I give it a good shake. And then I'll snip the tie, and then I go to the next one and give it another good shake. And that basically opens up the fibers without stretching anything. And then the other thing that I have been resisting, and I finally had to start doing it, is write it down, because you're not going to remember. 6 months down the road, you're not
record, document.
Sample. That has been my biggest thing.
And take pictures.
My samples are my tea towels and my washcloths and stuff like that, because I want to make something that's useful, but they're all samples.
Yeah.
I would say don't be afraid to start small.
Mm.
Be willing to just pick up a deck of cards from the casino or someplace and grab the yarn you have and start where you are, rather than waiting until you're old or you retire or you have the time. Because if you do wait, you may or may not ever find that time.
Yeah.
I also think, to go with that comment, don't be afraid to cut something off the loom if you hate it. If you aren't enjoying it and you're like, okay, I just gotta gut this one out, I got another 20 hours and I'm done. No, like if it's sitting there for 6 months and it's not inspiring you and you're not enjoying it, it's worth cutting your losses and cutting it off and finding the thing that is inspiring. And it might be that it's a different color or a different texture or a different project or whatever it is. Like don't be afraid to walk away from a mistake, even if it took you a long time to make it. Like sometimes you just got to move forward.
Yes, it's starting, basically.
Morweena, in computer science, so I'm used to systematic testing. So when I was learning, and if I'm trying to teach somebody else, I work very systematically. So start with an easy pattern and an easy fiber. And then your next step is maybe the easy pattern with a more tricky fiber, or a tricky, just systematic step up. Or be nuts and jump in with both feet, but be prepared to cut it off if you don't like it. Don't let it frustrate you. Everybody makes mistakes. Like this warp that I just tied on today, I can't remember the last time a warp fought me as much as this warp has fought me. I don't know why. I'm calling it my don't get cocky warp, because I've been weaving pretty steadily for the last couple of years, and I'm like, oh, I got this warping thing down. I used to do it one way, but I changed my method, and I'm like, okay, I got it. I don't need to worry about this anymore. I got this knocked down. Warp peg jumped out of the board as I was chaining off. So it's mucked up my tension, and I should have known right from there, this one's going to be a bitch. And then it was the longest warp I've done too, and it fought me from the beginning to the end. It's all tied on now and it's good, but don't get cocky. Don't be surprised that all of a sudden you screw something up that you know so well.
Yeah.
Don't get you down.
Yeah.
The other thing
most experienced weavers will screw up putting on a warp, and sometimes I'll just look at it going, really? I have been doing this my entire adult life. Yeah, yes. Actually, I'll give you my best tip. So I had to do a card weaving thing for the guild, and I was traveling so much for work, and I realized that I had given away almost all my card weaving and I had no samples. So I said to my husband, here's a book. Here's some card weaving. Do you think that you could try and make some samples for me? A year later, I have a giant basket. That's how I got to learn about Margoton, because he is very active now on the historic tablet weaving, and he has outstripped me. And now I have amazing card weaving every day landing on me. So, but it's costing me a ton in books, because apparently you have to get the books in from Germany and Finland, and holy crap.
I think
Dan, how
Yeah,
about some tips from you for tapestry specifically? I'm sorry, Kiva. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the importance of samples. Don't be afraid if you're going to tackle a big project. Like I've got a scarf, it's scarfish here, and you can see I've just done like every 10 centimeters or so. I have done different weave till I found something that made me happy. So don't be afraid to stop and do a sample and kind of figure out exactly what you want before you plan out a massive project and just run with it. Sometimes you gotta walk.
And a counterpoint to that, don't be afraid of planning a full-size sample in scarf or shawl form rather than yardage, so that you still have something that you feel is useful afterward, even if you cut it up into washcloths.
Yes, that's true.
I think something that's important to remember too, when for beginning weavers, is that more than 50% of your time is the prep. It's not just the weaving. And I hear often people getting really frustrated, like, oh, the warping has been going on forever, or oh, I keep threading these things and I'm making mistakes and things like that. And it's part of the whole process. So I think that's something to.
There's a lot of math.
See,
And
now
then
I'm not a math
to finish
person, and
everything.
so I have a system that I work at, which is a very visual system, and it's all based in like just my ends per inch and how big I want to make it, because math really is a problem for me.
There is a lot of math.
Yeah.
And try and figure out how much warp you need.
But there is calculators. Use the calculators.
Oh, I do.
You need to know the theory to use the calculator.
That's true. That's true. But there's some great books out there on weaving, and there's things like the Jane Stafford Guild. Etan, how about some tips for tapestry weavers in the audience?
I'm trying to go back to the original, figure out what the original question is, what started us out. I mean, I would say for tapestry.
Best weaving tip. Best weaving tip.
Best weaving tips. Make sure you're comfortable, what you said. Treat yourself to nice tools if you can. And the lovely thing about regular weaving, you have to, once you get really seriously into it, you probably want a bigger loom, and that's a lot of money. But you can do tapestry. Literally, you can start on a picture frame. But the looms I use, you can see one in the background. It's a simple copper frame, but I can tension it. There's a, oh, there, that's better. There's a bolt there that I can tension it, because in tapestry, being able to tension it is really quite important. But from there, but the thing I've learned more and more over time is to put more energy into my cartoons, to really think of my drawing and how I'm going to handle it, especially as you get more complex. Because technically it's pretty much tabby over and under, but it's working with the image. And if you have, and to go back to what whoever said about if you hate it, cut it off. I've just twice now in the last 2 months, I've just abandoned something and cut it off. Because if you haven't spent time and thinking in advance, and it's a game with regular weaving, then you start working on it and it's not going to work. And And the other thing I have learned with tapestry is to stop and to take time and to look, because it's really tempting to keep going. And then you get past where you're doing, you know, especially me, I'm working on some really intricate faces and things. And if I don't stop and look and take time, then I have to rip it out because I've gone too far. And it might be the same with regular weaving. Do you find that you can get going and then you lose your tension, you lose your beat? Yeah, okay.
And especially if it's a complicated pattern, you go, was the two going up or was the two going down? It can be. The one thing that you mentioned is that and I see that there's been some comments about, you know, weaving. How do you want a bigger loom? I'm going to say that every loom that I own is secondhand. I bought my 45-inch floor harness is a 1970s floor loom from, I bought somebody from the Vancouver's Guild. Like it's a really old loom. My 8 harness is actually, I bought it from James, from Laura Fry at a Fibers West. And my table loom I bought from a fellow guild member and these are not expensive looms.
Yep.
Now, it does, your apron rips and you got to get new aprons, or you don't like your type of heddles and you've got to get heddles. Very few people I know have a brand new loom. Where did everybody get their looms?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
In trades, I wanted a recreation of the Osberg, the tapestry loom in the Osberg find in Norway. So I traded it with Duke Saverick. I was like, hey, I can make you weaving. It was going to take me this amount of time. And so so you can barter your time that way. And all my looms are secondhand. I haven't bought any looms new yet.
Being part of a guild, it's amazing how often looms come up.
Yeah.
Table looms are harder because people have smaller spaces. So you actually pay more for a table loom than for a bigger loom. People hold on to them more.
I had a table loom and I actually sold it to Dame Margaret, but I sold that to her for more than I paid for my big 45-inch counterbalance loom, because no one has room for a 45-inch counterbalance loom anymore. It's huge.
Yep.
It was only $200. I found it on Facebook Marketplace for $200 and it was in great shape. So the Leclerc looms in particular, over in Canada, and they're a Canadian company. And because their looms are very well made out of really good hardwood, trust me, I dropped breast beam on my foot in December and broke my toe. Don't do that. Don't do that. It was very painful. They're really well made, so they last forever. So mine's from 1976. Tablet looms I bought from a merchant on the island, House Blue Dog.
Oh,
shout out to them. That's where I get my tablet weaving cards, the wooden cards, and that's where I get my tablet, the inkle looms. I love their stuff. I like their tablets because they have a grain, so it's very handy. You know which way is up.
My looms, my 24-inch Leclerc table loom I got from my mother-in-law. She lent it to me 7 years ago, but at that point we kind of knew that she wasn't going to be able to weave anymore, and one day I'll get her Salish loom. When I moved to the island, I bought an 8-shaft loom that was also a Leclerc and brought it to the island, and I really struggled a lot with it. It was not a comfortable loom for me to use, so I ended up selling it. And with that money, I bought a used Saori loom, which is the Japanese style.
Japanese.
Yes, and then Martha from my spinning group gifted me a 45-inch counterbalance, 1970s. Obviously used for teaching, because there's little stickers all over it that labeled every single part of the loom. And then I also have stickers on when it got moved, and the moving company has got stickers on every single piece. and numbers so that you could put it all together, because I had nothing to tell me. So those 3 looms, and then House Blue Dog, again, my inkle loom is from them. And I also have some cards for my tablet weaving as well.
My floor looms, I got one as part of an estate from a weaver in Quesnel after she passed away for much less than it was worth. I paid $600 for a 12 shaft Lewitt spring.
Great.
Delivered from Quesnel. I've got one, my 4 shaft that is reasonably period accurate to around the 1350s, was hand built by somebody local, and it arrived for free in the back of a friend's car for me. My 8 shaft table loom I got at a guild sale, and it was a local retired weaver that got my floor inkle loom. It's one of the Leclercs.
Yeah.
And so that one lives out at the Fields of Gold site, so that I've got a warping board and a loom once my period accurate loom ends up out in my building at the Fields of Gold site. And then all of my tape looms, well, some of them I have 3D printed or laser cut. Some of them I've bought laser cut by other people. Some of them are just piles of casino playing cards. It really depends on where things fall into my lap, because I swear I'm carrying a sign around that floats above my head that says Loom and Fiber Orphanage.
It's a nice problem to have. Well, to bring us back, because we're in the SCA and we're obviously history is something that we're all pretty passionate about. But, you know, Etan, is there a particular area of research that you focus on for weaving in more of an SCA context as opposed to modern? And then back up to the entire group.
Right. The interesting thing with most information about tapestry is it's all the books pretty well are image based and not technical. So if you want to learn to weave tapestry, I recommend modern books. But I would say the best place to look, I've gotten really fascinated by the little Coptic pieces that are you find here and there. And like today, I spent a couple of hours in the Louvre collection, textile collection, looking at pieces there. And then because it's image based, I would take a tapestry image I like, and the Coptics are nice because they're fairly simple and smallish. But I found reweaving them, my hands are doing, there's times I'm going, oh my God, they made the exact same decision I made. And so it gives you a feeling of working with the past and working with and learning what was happening. You know, in the future, I love the early pieces, and I'd love to do a larger chunk of the boulderschal. And again, it's with tapestry more than anything else, I find that you get the image, but the only way to really learn it is by doing it. And then you run into a problem, and then you have to figure it out or search for it. My problem with the boulderschal tapestry, I found in a modern Finnish weaver's book. But she also obviously had looked at, she had access and could look at the original pieces and figure out how it was done. And yeah, so I've got a lot of books. I've looked at a lot of books of images. And that's certainly what I spend the most in as far as research goes for time. That and doing. I think all of us is. Kiva, you when you did some of your pieces, same thing. You look at it and then you try and do it.
Yeah, so I for most of my SCA career, I very much focused on Viking Age tablet weaving. It gets, I think people do some of it and they move on and they don't quite grasp just how complicated some of those pieces get. You've got sort of 4 wefts going at once. You've got, you've got 2, like in the same pick, you've got 2 metals, you've got silver and gold coming through, you've got a stabilizing weft, you've got a shadowy weft, a thicker one that's going through to give your design shape and shadow. It gets pretty crazy. And so there's a great line in Peter Collingwood's book about tablet weaving, which is that it's almost a willful pursuit of complexity, and that's really what it is that I love about tablet weaving, because you can go down some pretty deep holes, research wise. I mean, and so I do. For me, I really am interested in very early stuff. I'm not quite so interested when sort of Christianity takes over. I kind of lose, personally, I lose interest. So I like sort of the Viking Age and Finnish Iron Age, which has been really interesting because, 10 years ago, nobody was doing Finnish Iron Age. And then we, like I said, my husband was working there. So we were there quite a bit, and then the Finns and the SCA were loving that people outside Finland were interested, which was really a kind of a wonderful thing to be a part of. And now it's much more popular, which is great. They deserve it. So I do some of that stuff, and the books are out now. But I like really old pre-Christian Europe is what I really enjoy doing. And then it's also an interesting time to be in the SCA here on the coast. We're on, coast of British Columbia here. There are pre-contact textiles here. For cultural appropriation reasons, I wouldn't try to recreate. But there is some like interesting stuff coming out now that I'm also keeping kind of an eye on. That I think I'd like to see us kind of talking a little bit more in on Tir about. But yeah, there's just sort of lots of little things I'm interested in.
And I think a lot of people assume that if you're a weaver, that's what you're interested in is tends to be more Norse. But I think that from what I've seen from Morweena, you're definitely more interested in weaving within your own sort of persona time frame. Am I correct in that?
I joke that for someone who does not do Norse, I weave a lot of Norse things because there's a market for it.
Yeah.
I like one of the first piece that I worked towards. So when I first started weaving cloth, I'm like, okay, you need to learn how to use this loom, and you're going to weave fabric, and you're going to make a garment, and you're going to enter it in Tir ANS. That was my goal. And
that's the hood.
That was the hood. That was my red hood, and that was my goal. It's like, okay, you're going to make fabric, and you're going to make it in a style that's consistent with one of your chosen persona time periods, which is the 14th century. So I researched, and I'm getting better at the research part. I really hate writing, but I like reading. I researched the type of, how heavy was the thread, what kind of dyes were used, were they using plain weave or twill? And then you get into this whole evolution of, so I'm really going to go off on a tangent, how the introduction of the horizontal treadle loom started the sort of industrial revolution with cloth, and you moved away from the vertical loom, and they also moved away from twill to plain weave because they could make it more efficiently. They could make more cloth for less money. So you jump into this rabbit hole of research, and what I wound up doing, I made twill because there was a practical aspect to it, but I wanted to make it to make a hood. I want to ultimately make enough yardage to make a gown, but to amuse myself and to hone my skills, to hone my mechanics, because mechanics are huge, I make a lot of those Norse apron fronts because my friends want to buy them, or random people on the internet, yeah, those want to buy them. And I can make the beautiful diamond twills that are not common in my chosen time period, because I like 14th century, but it was out of fashion. That lets me make the goose-eyed twills and that kind of stuff that I can't make for my persona. But I've also done some plain weave and stuff for Roman. So I try to make it fit my persona, but I do spend a lot of time doing Norse stuff because it's out there. Like there's information about the tablet weaving, like the book I picked up earlier. The best tablet weaving patterns that are out there right now are Finnish Iron Age ones, and that's all Mervy's fault. They're pretty patterns, not appropriate for what I want to do. And like I said, and with the, because I want to weave for my persona, but the most information that's easily accessible seems to be Norse based.
Again, most of my interest, and I think Signora, she's definitely from some of the postings I've seen are later, but I found things like there was a Canadian economist like John Monroe who did a lot of, provided a lot of research on textiles, particularly in the Low Countries, through how things were, how much they were worth, and why did they shift to black being the, from black to red, and from purple, and things like that. So I'm more interested in how cloth was used as money, as that it was a luxury good. It was, so that's kind of my weird little geek, I suppose, is that that's what I like. But I know, Signora, you're definitely looking at really within your persona, because I've seen you post some questions. So maybe you could share some of the questions that you've been asking people.
Certainly. I am a weaver married to a merchant in Firenze, Florence, 1490. And looking at a lot of the fabric of the period that you see in the paintings, are all the brocades and the damask and all these lovely little things where you've got all the little boys running around all the little looms so that you can do these magnificent designs. And there's silk and cotton and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of choice for higher end. But I'm more interested in what would, not lower class, but what would a middle class person wear? And so some of the work that I've been trying to do, I found a dress in the Pisa collection, and it was a linsey woolsey dress done in the diamond goose eye type weaving, and done with a linen warp and a green wool weft. And so I'm trying to, my research is leading me to try and find out more about that and how I can recreate a piece of cloth to be able to make that for myself. But what I've been really working on is trying to weave in wool when you don't really know what kind of wool they really used in the period. And a lot of it is single ply. And so my work has been on trying to get the right ends per inch. I've discovered that 11 threads per centimeter. And so my newest thing of figuring out is that, yeah, that's because it's washed and worn. So when I first did a sample doing the 11 ends per centimeter, it was a mess. And so I took 20% less and wove it, and I had much more success. Still a bit of problems. I still haven't found my warp yet. And wool warp, but I got to 11 ends per inch once it was, or 11 ends per centimeter once I washed it. So that was a really big step forward. So I'm still working on that. I learned that I shouldn't be using brown or gray wool, because it would be, if I wove that, it would be a lovely donation to the church for the brothers that, or the friars, or I can't remember what group, that swear poverty and give to the poor, or for my servants, or for whatever. So I have to use white wool.
Okay. Margoton, what's your focus in your weaving for the SCA research piece?
It's sort of been haphazard at best because of my energy levels being limited. But my main focus is narrow wares, because I literally could spend the rest of my life never going wider than an inch and never running out of things to study. As an example, this is one of the first pieces entirely out of hand spun that I'm making, so that maybe I'll eventually wear trim of my own instead of just giving it all away. And this is reasonably close to what they would have had for a period grist. As a 2-ply, it works out to about a 235, so we figured a few weeks ago.
So Kiva, I believe we had an hour for the panel, and then we were going to, I want to give Etan the last bit, see if she had anything else to add. But then could we open it up to the
So it can
people who are
go sort of as long.
participating?
It can go as long as we
Okay.
want. I usually tell people an hour because an hour is not as intimidating as 2 hours. But we still have we still have as big an audience as when we started, so people are still keen to hear more. So it's sort of
Okay.
whatever you feel as the guest host tonight. You can kind of make a
Okay.
call and then open it up, whatever you like.
Okay. How about if anybody has any questions, Kiva, can you see the questions, and then maybe we could field some of the questions? But why don't we start with some of the where do you get your things, the stuff that you're using to weave with? Because Etan, you are on mute.
No, oh, no, I just didn't want to jump in without permission. I just want to go back to one thing about research, because we've been focusing on the doing, but there's all sorts of areas like the guilds, and that's a whole other rabbit hole you can go down. And I also was working with the tapestry. I've got a database that was like what image, when, what materials were used. But the guild part is, I haven't gotten as much information as I want yet. It's a whole rabbit hole to go down, but that's a whole
The
other
medieval
area.
guilds, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and the dyers guilds and how the dyeing was done. You know, there's all sorts of other areas besides the physical weaving that can be fascinating.
That's kind of what I was talking about with how the introduction of the different types of looms changed the economic structure, particularly of England, because that's the paper I was reading was specifically looking at the English wool trade.
Yeah.
And who does what? Like the dyers do the dyeing, right? And the silk, you got people who work with silk, people who work with linen, people who work with wool. Like they was all very distinct and very separate guilds, and what people did at home versus the professionals, like the guilds, is entirely different. And what they were doing in Italy versus what they were doing in England, again, was very interesting. That whole silk industry in Italy is a great rabbit hole for people to dive into, and the dyeing and just that piece is very interesting. So it's there's lots of pieces.
I was
And of course,
reading
the
that
guilds-
in Italy, just like before the plague, 1/3 of the population were spinners. About 30,000 people were the spinners, just to keep the weavers in work.
Another thing about the guild system is that we still have its imprint on a lot of things that are being done now. Looms have not changed materially in quite a long time, except for the motorized ones, the mechanized ones. And we are still stuck with multiple count systems from multiple industries from hundreds of years ago, which is one of the hardest things for new weavers to cope with.
I did put.
So where you get? So go ahead, Morweena.
I put in the chat the link to the Etsy shop that House Blue Dog has, and people are interested in tablet looms, inkle looms, pardon me, shuttles, and carts.
Okay. If you live in the Lower Mainland, there is a local store. There's a couple of stores that if you're interested in weaving and you're interested, but there's Penelope's Fibers out in Surrey. And that is a store that caters to weavers. So if you wanted to start with something simple like a rigid heddle or a inkle loom, those are available. But you know, she also has a lot of cottons and cotolins and silks and stuff for spinners. Again, on Granville Island, there's Maiwa that has that caters to a lot of textile artists, as well as Diana Sanderson's, because I work a lot in silk. Silk is my preferred fiber to work in, and there's a lot of things on that. Vancouver Island, I believe there's a Naughty by Nature in Victoria. And there's a place up in Duncan. So there is a lot more around you that maybe you're not necessarily aware of, but there is definitely brick and mortar stores. The online world is very rich. You know, in Canada, there's a very, very strong weaving tradition across the country. You don't always have to buy across the border. So if you're interested, something like Camilla Valley, the Brassard and Sons, if there's a lot of amazing places in Canada to get it. So I really am a big fan of Camilla Valley because she's Canadian and she provides very good quality things, and she carries full colors because, you know, if you're interested in UKI or something like that, she carries full colors. So those are some of the things, but I know for tapestry, you probably have slightly different go-to people.
Button and needlework in Victoria is fabulous. I have been ordering online from him for the last year and a half.
Sorry, Etan, what was the name again? You said it.
Button and Needlework Boutique, and it's on Trounce Alley, and he has a lot of knitting supplies as well. He also carries, I think it's DMC. Anyway, he carries embroidery, a range of, or large range of embroidery. Appleton, he carries both the tapestry and the crewel wools in the complete colors. And they're just wonderful. And there's Stitcher's Muse up in Nanaimo as well.
I've done a lot of comparison shopping. If I want something right away, I go to Penelope's. Particularly if I'm just buying cotton, she's got her full range of cotton, so everything is there. If I want wool, Camilla Valley Farm has the best price, particularly if you're buying lots of quantity. The more you buy, the less they charge.
Yeah.
But they're very old fashioned there. So you go online, you fill out a form, but then she emails you back and tells you what the shipping is going to be. And it might go out on Thursday, but maybe Monday. So their price is good, but they're slow. So just keep that in mind if you're ordering from Camilla Valley Farm in Ontario. They are a little slow. If you need it fast and you want a good variety of colors and you're okay paying a little bit more, that's when I order from Jane Stafford. Because I will order it on Monday and it's in my hands on Wednesday. It's literally that fast. And she does have I know that Magdelena is not a fan of this yarn, but I do. I like it. The Harrisville Shetland. She has a really good stock of that yarn all the time. And her online her online shop is really well done because you can put stuff in the cart, you can see how much is left, and you can email her and ask about dye lots. Camilla Valley Farm, they have huge amounts of stuff, but they're just not as organized. They're not as modern, so it takes a little bit longer to get.
And I do order from Jane if I want something pretty quickly. I absolutely that. But the nice thing I like about Penelope's is she orders in, because I like 2/8 mainline is my favorite. It's my favorite go-to wool. I have it like, sorry, cat. This is one that I have it. It's this I have, like, it is my go-to, and Penelope will bring it in for me, so I don't have to order down south. But here's a tip for everybody. You cannot get white in 2/8 mainline or snow anywhere. She can't get it from Jagerspun. So right now, that is one of the byproducts of the last year, is some of the stuff is, they're having a hard time getting the stuff in from the wholesalers. So, or even the people who are manufacturing it. So things are a little bit more challenging that way.
Yeah, I know that Harrisville was closed for a while from COVID. The mill was closed. And then Penelope, she has a shipping box in Blaine that she can't go to.
She can't get to,
So on Vancouver Island, a couple of things. We've got a sort of mid-island in Arrington, I guess. There's a place called Grinsheet, and she has a lot of she's the Ashford dealer, and so she's got rigid heddle looms, and she's got a lot of spinning supplies, and she's bringing in some of the Dutch.
Then
the
Ven.
Yes.
Oh, the Ven and the Louette.
Yeah, she's got the Ven, cotton and cotton and stuff like that, plus a lot of roving that people can use for spinning and pin looms and felting, all the stuff that she has there. And then the Bradley Spinners traditionally held a fiber market once a year. We haven't for COVID, of course, and a lot of people come for that. That's a pretty big one on the island. And then in, there was another place I was thinking of and I can't remember off the top of my head. So when I remember, I'll let you know.
All right.
The other place that's not local, but that I've had really good, and it's an SCA source, is Timeless Textiles. And beautiful. I just did my first, I use small skeins, so I got half-inch or half-ounce skeins from them. But it's not a solid dye color. There's just just tiny variations in it, which is really neat. And I think I placed an order and I had it in a week.
I've got stuff sitting at the border for 4 months.
Yeah.
That I've ordered for 4 months that I can't, that's just sitting in customs that I can't get across. So I'm completely jealous.
Wow.
It's very hit
My
miss right now.
order was small, so it just came in the mail.
Okay.
And if you need loom parts, Camilla Valley Farm is a LeClaire dealer. So if you buy your cheap loom off Craigslist and you need parts, they can get it for you. And LeClaire will even machine parts for out of service looms. And Camilla, you just order it through Camilla.
All right, I just want to thank everybody, and because we've got this being recorded, but we're going to stop the formal piece here. I just want to thank each and every one of you. When I reached out, you were just amazing. I didn't know all of you all that well, but I've had a chance to dig down and get to know you a little bit better. Thank you, Kiva, for giving us this opportunity. I feel that I really want to geek out with you in person. So I know we have the Sable Lion Weavers, but maybe when Tir Righ gets together, we could have a little sort of Tir Righ version of the Sable Lion where we get together at events and then have these conversations and open them up to and encourage people to embrace the joy of weaving, which is from narrow wares to amazing tapestries that Etan produces and is teaching people to all the stuff that everybody else is doing. Pay attention to her Grace. She has a great blog that she has started on her dyeing, so please pay attention to that. Morweena posts lots of stuff that she does. Aspasia there, and Margoton, I've been enjoying your posts as well. So everybody seek these people out in person, as well as go onto Facebook and social media. They are talented people, and we are blessed in Tir Righ to have them. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.